Jake gave everything to his company, 17 years of loyalty. Then they fired him without warning. But they didn't know Jake had already uncovered their $5 million secret. For nearly 2 decades, Jake Mercer was the backbone of Pinnacle Tech's IT infrastructure. At 54, with salt and pepper hair and quiet confidence, he wasn't the flashiest employee, but he was undoubtedly the most reliable. Jake was the first to arrive each morning, his weathered Toyota Camry claiming the same parking spot by 7:15 a.m. without fail. He was the one executives called at midnight when servers crashed, the one who remembered everyone's birthdays with a handwritten note, the one who trained dozens of younger employees who went on to become department heads while he remained in his comfortable but modest position. Jake didn't mind. He found satisfaction in stability, in knowing every line of code, every server rack, every digital corner of the company he helped build from a small startup to a regional powerhouse. His colleagues often joked that Jake knew the company's systems better than he knew himself. That Tuesday morning seemed no different from the thousands before it. Jake swiped his security badge, nodded to the receptionist, and settled at his desk with his thermos of black coffee. By 9:30 a.m., his day had imploded. "Jake, could you come to the conference room?" The HR director's voice carried an artificial cheeriness that immediately set off alarm bells. Inside sat 3 people: the HR director, the new CTO who had joined 6 months ago, and a security guard Jake had never seen before. The meeting lasted exactly 7 minutes. No performance issues cited, no warning given, no opportunity for questions, just corporate platitudes about restructuring and moving in a new direction. As the security guard escorted him to clear out his desk, Jake noticed the eyes of his colleagues, some pitying, some deliberately avoiding contact, all shocked at the treatment of the man who had been there longer than anyone. "We'll need your badge, passwords, and company phone," the HR director said, standing awkwardly by Jake's desk as he mechanically emptied his drawers. 17 years reduced to a cardboard box of personal items. As the security guard walked him to the exit, Jake turned for one last look at the office. Through the glass walls of the executive suite, he could see the new CTO already in animated conversation with the CFO, both laughing. The drive home passed in a blur. Jake's mind, always methodical, couldn't process the abruptness of his dismissal. By late afternoon, the shock had given way to a hollow ache, not just of losing his job, but of betrayal. No thank you for the countless weekends sacrificed. No acknowledgement of the systems he had built and maintained. Just discarded, like obsolete hardware. His phone buzzed periodically with messages from shocked colleagues. Most expressed disbelief. A few offered to help with job leads. One, from Mia in accounting, simply read, "This isn't right, Jake. Call me when you can." Jake didn't call anyone that night. Instead, he sat at his home computer and began to methodically review his personal notes, the habit of an organized IT professional who had documented everything for years. As he scrolled through folders of information, a pattern began to emerge, one he had noticed weeks ago, but hadn't fully connected until now. It had started 3 months earlier, when Jake was troubleshooting an authentication issue in the financial system. While examining login records, he noticed unusual access patterns from the CFO's account. Late-night logins to the vendor payment system from unrecognized IP addresses. At first, Jake assumed it was the CFO working from home. But the pattern continued, always accessing the same modules, always from different locations. Following protocol, Jake had submitted a security report. 2 days later, The new CTO personally assured him it was resolved. The CFO had been traveling, using hotel Wi-Fi. The explanation made sense, but something about the CTO's dismissiveness lingered in Jake's mind. Then came the system update request 3 weeks ago. The CFO's office wanted administrative changes to the vendor payment verification protocol, specifically to remove the secondary approval requirement for vendors added by certain administrators. Jake had implemented the change as instructed, but added a silent logging feature, a habit from his early security days. The logs showed immediate activity. 6 new vendors added within 48 hours, all with similar banking information, despite supposedly different business types. Jake cross-referenced these new vendors with the company database. They had no previous relationship with Pinnacle Tech, no contracts on file, no service records, but each had received payments, starting small at $15,000, then growing bolder with $75,000, then $130,000 transfers. In the glow of his home office monitor, Jake's mind made the final connection. The vendors were shells. The payments were fraudulent. And based on the access logs, only 3 people could be responsible. The CFO, David Mitchell, the new CTO, Raymond Wells, and the accounting director, Patricia Voss. The same people who had engineered his dismissal. Jake leaned back in his chair as realization washed over him. They hadn't fired him because of restructuring. They'd fired him because he was the only one who might notice their scheme. The only one who understood the systems well enough to catch them. His first instinct was rage, to call the CEO, to storm back into the office, to expose them immediately. But Jake had built his career on methodical precision, not emotional reactions. And now, that same disciplined approach would be his greatest asset. Jake didn't break down. He didn't lash out. Instead, he formulated a plan. The next morning, Jake began his counteroffensive with the precision of someone who had spent decades managing complex systems. His first move was to secure what evidence he already had. Before leaving Pinnacle, Jake had followed the company's data security protocol to the letter, which gave him a legitimate reason to have backed up critical system logs. These backups, stored on his personal drives according to company policy for disaster recovery, now became his first repository of evidence. He methodically organized screenshots, log files, and access records into encrypted folders. The picture was clear, but incomplete. Jake needed more. His second move was more delicate. Still having the personal phone numbers of several junior IT staff who respected him, Jake reached out to Marcus, a bright systems analyst he had mentored. "Hey Marcus, quick favor. Did you ever restore those vendor verification protocols after the test we ran last month? Just realized I never confirmed before everything happened." The question sounded innocent, just a conscientious professional tying up loose ends. Marcus's response provided exactly what Jake needed. "No, Ray said to leave it as is. Actually, they've made a few more changes since you left. Removed a bunch of audit triggers too. Seems weird. But he's the boss now." More pieces fell into place. Jake thanked Marcus and moved to the next phase of his plan. For the next 3 days, Jake lived a double life. Mornings were spent applying for new jobs, attending networking events, and reassuring concerned friends that he was moving on. Evenings were devoted to meticulously building his case. On day 4, Jake executed his most audacious move. Using knowledge of the company's email security protocols he had implemented, Jake created a convincing internal email that appeared to come from the company's external audit firm. The message, addressed to the CFO, referenced preliminary findings of payment irregularities and requested a meeting to discuss unusual vendor activity. Jake knew the email would never reach the actual audit firm, but he also knew the CFO would panic and likely communicate with his accomplices. The trap was set. Within hours, Jake's home monitoring system pinged with alerts. Someone was attempting to purge the vendor transaction logs, the very logs Jake had already secured copies of. Emergency account access overrides were being initiated for the accounting system. From his home office, Jake watched as the conspirators scrambled to cover their tracks, unknowingly providing him with the final pieces of evidence he needed. The activity continued late into the night. Frantic system changes, deleted records, modified approval histories. By morning, the three had effectively documented their own guilt by attempting to erase it. 1 week after his unceremonious dismissal, Jake was ready. He had compiled a comprehensive report, 42 pages of evidence, meticulously annotated with dates, times, amounts, and system events. The document chronicled a sophisticated fraud totaling $5.3 million over 6 months, all diverted through shell companies that traced back to offshore accounts connected to the three executives. Jake bypassed human resources. He bypassed the anonymous ethics hotline. Instead, he sent his report directly to each member of Pinnacle Tech's board of directors, along with copies to the company's external counsel and audit partner. His email was simple. I was terminated without cause after 17 years of service to Pinnacle Tech. During my tenure, I discovered the attached evidence of significant financial fraud. I provide this information in accordance with my ethical obligations as a former employee. I am available to discuss this matter at your convenience. Jake hit send at 7:15 a.m., the exact time he used to arrive at work each day. By 10:30 a.m., his phone rang. The board chairman's number flashed on his screen. Mr. Mercer, this is Edward Blackwell. I believe we need to talk. The emergency board meeting was called for 1 p.m. Jake arrived at Pinnacle Tech's headquarters at 12:45, escorted not by security this time, but by the board chairman himself. As they walked through the open office, Jake could feel the stares, the whispers. Word had spread that something major was happening, though few knew the details. The boardroom was tense. 8 board members sat around the mahogany table, with the CEO looking confused and concerned at one end. Notably absent were the CFO, CTO, and accounting director. They've been asked not to come in today, Edward Blackwell explained, as if reading Jake's mind. We've initiated emergency protocols based on your report. For the next 2 hours, Jake walked the board through his findings. His presentation was neither vengeful nor emotional, just factual, detailed, and irrefutable. He showed how the scheme had begun shortly after Raymond Wells joined as CTO, how the payment amounts had grown bolder as they went undetected, and how his own security reports had been suppressed. "And you verified these offshore connections?" asked one board member, her expression grave. "As much as I could without official authority," Jake replied. "But the patterns are clear. The transactions all follow the same signature." At 3:30 p.m., the boardroom door opened. 2 plainclothes police officers and a representative from the district attorney's office entered. The CEO looked physically ill. "The board has authorized full cooperation with authorities," Edward Blackwell announced. "Mr. Mercer has agreed to assist with the investigation." As Jake provided copies of his evidence to the officers, commotion erupted from the executive suite across the hall. Through the glass walls, Jake could see David Mitchell, the CFO, being approached by more officers. Patricia Voss from accounting was being escorted from her office, pale and shaking. Raymond Wells was nowhere to be seen. "Wells didn't come in today," the CEO said, noticing Jake's glance. "Called in sick this morning." By evening, the story had exploded within the company. Jake sat in what had been Raymond Wells' office, working with forensic accountants to trace every transaction. Periodically, shell-shocked executives would pass by, staring at the man they had dismissed a week earlier, who was now at the center of the largest crisis in company history. At midnight, Edward Blackwell entered with 2 cups of coffee. "The authorities have frozen multiple accounts," he said, handing Jake a coffee. "Mitchell and Voss are cooperating. Wells appears to have fled. His house is empty, and we think he may have left the country this morning." Jake nodded, too exhausted for words. "The board has been in continuous session," Blackwell continued. "We've unanimously agreed on several points. First, your termination is officially rescinded, with full back pay and a formal apology." Jake looked up, surprised. "Second," Blackwell continued, "we're creating a new position, Chief Information Security Officer, reporting directly to the board. We'd like you to take the role." The offer was unexpected. A week ago, Jake had been escorted from the building. Now, he was being offered an executive position with board-level authority. "Why?" Jake asked simply. "Because you understand these systems better than anyone. Because you acted with integrity when you could have just walked away. And frankly, because we need someone who can't be intimidated or corrupted." Blackwell paused. "The company needs rebuilding, Jake. Security, controls, trust. All of it." Jake considered the offer carefully. It wasn't about vindication or even career advancement at this point. It was about a company where he had spent nearly 2 decades of his life. A company now revealed to be more vulnerable than anyone had realized. "I'll need complete authority over system security, transparent reporting channels, and protection from retaliation," Jake said finally. "The board has already approved all 3 conditions," Blackwell replied. "We anticipated your concerns." 3 months later, Pinnacle Tech had transformed. With Jake leading a new security division, the company implemented rigorous controls, transparent reporting systems, and an anonymous whistleblower program that reported directly to the board. David Mitchell and Patricia Voss had both taken plea deals, providing evidence against Raymond Wells, who was eventually located in Belize and extradited back to face charges. The company had recovered nearly 60% of the stolen funds and had implemented insurance claims for the remainder. Jake's morning routine hadn't changed much, still arriving at 7:15 a.m., still parking in the same spot. But now, as he walked through the office, there was a different kind of respect in his colleagues' eyes. Not just for his technical skills or his loyalty, but for his integrity when tested. On a Friday afternoon, Jake passed by the desk of Marcus, the young IT analyst who had unwittingly helped him gather evidence. "You know what I learned from all this?" Marcus asked. Jake raised an eyebrow questioningly. "Never burn bridges," Marcus said, then added with a smile, "Just let them collapse under their own greed." Jake laughed, a genuine laugh that had been rare in recent months. "It wasn't about revenge, Marcus. It was about doing what's right." As Jake continued his walk through the office he had nearly lost, he reflected on his journey. He had given 17 years to Pinnacle Tech. He had been betrayed, dismissed, and underestimated. But in the end, his greatest revenge wasn't bringing down those who had wronged him. It was rebuilding something better from the ruins they had created. Never in his career had Jake sought the spotlight or demanded recognition. He had been content to be the silent backbone of the company's infrastructure. Now he walked the halls, not as a ghost of the past, but as the guardian of its future. And that, Jake decided, was justice enough.